Welcome to my channel Alien Signal. The first thing the students noticed about the human was how ordinary he looked. No claws, no armored plating, no venom sacs, no visible defense mechanisms at all. Just soft skin, two forward-facing eyes, and a relaxed posture that made absolutely no sense in a room designed to simulate lethal environments. The classroom fell into a low murmur as he walked in. "That's the Deathworlder," hissed a tall, chitin-covered student from the back. "He doesn't even have natural weapons," another whispered, their tendrils curling in confusion. At the center of the room stood Instructor Vectel, a towering, four-limbed being whose exoskeleton gleamed under the sterile lights. His species was known across systems for surviving high-radiation wastelands, yet even he regarded the human with a measured curiosity. "Class," Vectel began, his voice clicking with authority, "today we continue our practical survival assessments." A ripple of unease passed through the room. Everyone knew what that meant. At the far end of the chamber, a reinforced containment field shimmered into view. Behind it lay a simulated environment, though simulation was a generous term. The Academy didn't believe in artificial safety. Everything inside that field was very, very real. Jagged terrain, toxic atmosphere pockets, autonomous predator drones programmed with lethal intent. And worst of all, the assignment. This test, Vectel continued, requires each student to retrieve a core sample from the center of the hazard zone. You will be evaluated on survival, efficiency, and adaptability. The lights dimmed slightly as the terrain projection stabilized. The zone flickered into clarity. A narrow canyon riddled with unstable ground, acid vents hissing at irregular intervals, and shadowy movement lurking along the cliffs. Several students recoiled instinctively. "This environment," Vectel added calmly, "has a historical survival rate of 12%. The murmuring stopped instantly. Even among elite Academy students, that number was terrifying. "First participant," Vectel said, scanning the roster. Krell of the Tharn Collective. A heavily armored student stepped forward. Krell's species was known for resilience, thick plating, regenerative tissue, and high toxin resistance. If anyone could handle it, it was him. The barrier opened with a low hum. Krell entered. For a moment, everything was still. Then the canyon came alive. The ground shifted violently beneath Krell's feet, nearly throwing him off balance. Acid geysers erupted nearby, forcing him to retreat. From above, a predator drone descended, sleek, silent, and fast. Krell reacted quickly, raising his armored limbs to shield himself. The drone struck, sparks flying as metal scraped against chitin. The class watched in tense silence. Krell fought hard. He adapted. He endured. But it wasn't enough. A second drone emerged from the shadows. Then a third. Within minutes, Krell was overwhelmed. The containment field flickered, and emergency protocols yanked him out, injured, smoking, and barely conscious. "Failure," Vectel stated simply. A chill spread through the room. One by one, more students were called. And one by one, they failed. Some lasted longer, some barely lasted seconds. The canyon seemed to learn from each attempt, growing more unpredictable, more hostile. By the time the 10th student was extracted, the classroom had fallen into a heavy, suffocating silence. Then Vectel spoke again. "Next, Elias Carter. Terran. Classification. Deathworlder." All eyes turned. The human, Elias, stood slowly. He didn't look nervous. If anything, he looked mildly curious. "Good luck," muttered a nearby student, though it sounded more like a farewell. Elias gave a small nod and stepped forward. The barrier opened. He walked in. And then, nothing happened. For a few seconds, the canyon remained eerily still. Elias glanced around, hands loosely at his sides, taking in the environment like someone sightseeing rather than entering a death trap. Then the ground shifted. A violent tremor rippled beneath him. Gasps echoed through the classroom. But instead of panicking, Elias bent his knees slightly, adjusting his balance instinctively. "Huh," he murmured, as if testing the movement. Loose footing. He took another step. Carefully, deliberately. An acid vent hissed nearby, spraying corrosive liquid across the rocks. Elias paused, watching the pattern. 1, 2, 3. Another burst. Yeah, that's rhythmic. He moved forward between eruptions without hesitation. The students stared, stunned. "He's predicting it," someone whispered. From above, a predator drone dropped silently, targeting him. This was where most students failed. Elias didn't even look up at first. But at the last second, he shifted, just a step to the side. The drone slammed into the ground where he'd been standing. What? Before it could recover, Elias grabbed a loose shard of rock and slammed it into the drone's sensor array. Sparks flew. The machine twitched, then went still. The room went completely silent. "He just improvised a weapon," one student said in disbelief. Elias dusted his hands lightly and kept walking. More drones emerged. Faster this time. Smarter. They circled him, coordinating their movements. Elias finally looked properly engaged. "Okay," he muttered. "Now this is interesting." The first drone lunged. He ducked. The second came from behind. He pivoted, using the terrain to force it into a narrow angle. The third, he kicked a loose rock mid-motion, sending it flying into the drone's propulsion system. It spiraled out of control and crashed. The class watched in growing shock. He wasn't stronger, he wasn't faster, but he was thinking, adapting, using everything around him like it was second nature. Within minutes, the drones were down. Not destroyed completely, but disabled enough to no longer pose a threat. Elias didn't celebrate. He just kept moving, toward the center. The canyon grew more unstable as he progressed. The ground cracked open in places, revealing glowing fissures below. Toxic gas pockets drifted unpredictably. And still, he moved forward. Step by step, reading the environment, adjusting constantly. When he finally reached the core sample location, he crouched down and examined it. "That's it," he said, almost disappointed. He picked it up, and turned back. The return trip was faster. More confident. The canyon threw everything it had at him. Collapsing paths, synchronized drone attacks, sudden gas bursts, but it wasn't enough. Not anymore, because now, Elias understood it. When he stepped out of the containment field, the room remained frozen in stunned silence. No one spoke. No one moved. Even Instructor Vectel seemed still. After a long moment, the instructor finally broke the silence. "Completion time," he said slowly, as the fastest recorded. He paused. By a significant margin. Elias shrugged slightly. "Wasn't that bad?" A collective shiver ran through the class. "Wasn't that bad? That environment," Vectel said carefully, "has eliminated every previous participant in this session." Elias glanced back at the canyon. "Yeah, but it's predictable." "Predictable," several students echoed at once. Elias nodded. "Everything has patterns. The ground shifts before it cracks. The vents cycle. Even the drones, they adapt, but not creatively. Once you figure that out, it's manageable." Manageable. The word hung in the air like a paradox. Vectel studied him for a long moment. "Tell me, Terran," he said finally, "is this level of hazard typical for your species?" Elias thought about it. "Not exactly like this," he admitted. "But, Earth's kinda rough. Weather, predators, terrain. You grow up learning to pay attention or you don't last long." The students exchanged uneasy looks. "This is normal for you," One asked. Elias gave a small shrug. I mean, not every day. But yeah, you get used to dealing with dangerous stuff. Silence. Heavy, contemplative silence. For the first time, the class wasn't looking at Elias with confusion or curiosity. They were looking at him with something else. Respect. And maybe, a little fear. Vectel turned back to the class. Let this be understood, he said, his voice carrying a new weight. Survival is not solely defined by physical capability. His gaze flicked briefly toward Elias. It is defined by adaptability, awareness, and the ability to learn faster than the environment can kill you. No one argued, because they had just seen it. A species with no natural weapons, no armor, no obvious advantages, walk into a lethal environment, and conquer it, effortlessly. As the class was dismissed, students slowly began to gather their things, still processing what they had witnessed. One of them hesitated, then approached Elias. How did you stay so calm? They asked. Elias smiled slightly. I wasn't calm, he said. I was focused. The student tilted their head. What's the difference? Elias thought for a moment. Calm means nothing's wrong, he said. Focus means everything's wrong, and you're dealing with it anyway. The student absorbed that quietly. Around them, the rest of the class began to leave, but the atmosphere had changed. Because now they understood something they hadn't before. The human wasn't dangerous because of strength, or speed, or biology. The human was dangerous because he adapted, and in a universe full of deadly environments, that made him unstoppable. Thank you for listening. Subscribe for more cinematic science fiction stories.